Alright, hello there internets. It's me as always, Ryan, right here from Tokyo, Japan. Alright, so a little while ago I did this little poll on Facebook asking people, what do you want me to make a video on? Alright, so I had this list of 10 things I thought people might be interested in me giving my take on, or explaining, or whatever, you know. And I got a few people to respond to that. And the one thing that came up over and over again was international banks taking over sovereign nations. Now I know this is something that a lot of people would say, oh, and of course not, this doesn't happen. It's just capitalism and a free market and everybody just screwed up. No. It didn't. Okay, so there's a few things we need to get out of the way first before we go into this. And it's a lot simpler than you think it is. Alright, so number one, people who have a lot of money don't care about money anymore. You really need to understand that. For someone who is mega filthy, dirty rich, power is their goal at that point. Why have all that money if you can't get some power out of it? So you really need to understand that. If you're mega stupid, filthy rich, you want power. Okay, so if you don't believe that, stop watching. Okay? Alright, so let's get into this. How does this actually work? Okay, so number one, if your nation has a fiat currency, you are very vulnerable to having your sovereignty hijacked by international banks. If your country does not have a fiat currency, it's much more difficult for this to happen. Fiat currencies are very, very weak because they're not backed up by any assets. There's no assets to them. They're just paper, monopoly money. And you create a market currency, for lack of a better word here, right? So the value of your currency depends on how many people accept it. So it's real easy for your fiat currency to lose value real quick, and you don't have to have any way to survive as a nation. So what do? Well, you're going to need a lot of support from a lot of banks. The banks need to come in and accept your fiat currency and spread it around. They need to trade in it. They need to invest in it. They need to give it some type of value. Alright, so these big banks, they're controlled by very powerful people with a lot of money. So they think, oh, how can I get more power? I want to hijack a nation and make them indentured servants, basically. So they need to give the fiat currency some type of asset. Something to back it up, right? So what they do is back it up with debt. A massive amount of debt, okay? That's the easiest, quickest way to give a fiat currency some weight. And then and how do they do that? Alright, here's how they do it. They convince your government that they should not be controlling the value of currency. The banks should be doing it. The banks have all this influence to make your fiat currency valuable, make it relevant, so people will buy it. Okay, so they'll go in and they're okay, we'll print the money. But every time we print it, since you don't have any money, we're going to loan it to you. We're going to loan this funny money, monopoly money to you at an interest rate that's higher than it really needs to be at all, right? So they dump this debt on you. So basically, every 1 unit of currency, you're going to go in debt at least twice that. So it's a 2-to-1 ratio, usually from the get-go. Sometimes more than that, but the 2-to-1 ratio is basically where it starts on loading this fiat currency down with debt. And they dump that debt on the government. So, the government's liable for it. They're liable for that debt. Right? So, what they do in turn is say, okay, now you owe us this debt-laden money that is fiat currency to begin with, so you got to pay it back. You're liable. Okay? That's how it starts. Right there. As soon as the government starts going in debt, yeah, you're in trouble with this fiat currency. So how are your government going to manage this? How are they going to manage this debt, right? Well, they got to do it through 2 ways. Their annual budget and bonds. Okay? So the annual budget, they have to manage it, keep it balanced. Okay? Now, a lot of governments got a hand with this because they just have the bank print, and the bank will just hand it to them. All right? So they don't develop any type of fiscal responsibility with it. Or the bank will say, oh, you go into debt as much as you want. Go ahead. We'll keep on keeping the printing presses hot. Okay? So they try to keep that balance. And eventually most governments can't do that. Second thing they do is through bonds, right? Now, we don't know what a bond is, right? It's a government-issued guarantee. You invest in us, we'll give you this bond, and after so many years, the bond will mature, and we'll pay you back. Because at that point, we've been able to grow our treasury, in theory. That's how a bond works. But if you got fiat currency, the bond is never really going to get that return back. So when the bonds mature, of course, the government can't pay it back because there's a massive amount of debt at this point. So you have to reissue the bond, which means like basically they pay it off, but they turn around and they reissue it or refinance it basically by having the bank give them more money to replace the bond they just lost. Right? So, bam, more debt keeps piling up through these bonds, these horribly unbalanced budgets they put out every year. So the debt keeps growing and growing and growing and growing, right? Until it gets to a point to where your government literally is beyond bankrupt. Chapter 13 doesn't even describe this type of bankruptcy, right? They're totally broke at this point. So, they can't fulfill their bond obligations because they can't even manage their own debt. Their budget is totally out of hand. So what happens? The bank wait until it gets to this point, and they'll go through a process of subjugating your nation. First thing we'll do is start messing with your credit rating, right? And we've seen a lot of that happening recently. Yeah, they'll start messing with your credit rating, making threats to you. They'll threaten to lower your credit rating, which has happened a few times. There's some key nations recently that no one ever expected to happen to. See, France is a big one. America, we all know about that. Russia, still trying to fight that off, right? And even Japan, again, right? And Japan really don't need that right now, but it happened to them, right? So that's the first thing they'll do. Second thing they'll do is start demanding you take more debt, right? We saw this in America a few years ago, where the Wall Street banks basically put a gun to their own head. And, you know, it's kind of like Blazing Saddles, you know, this scene with the sheriff. He puts the gun to his head, and he says, you know, stop him or shoot! Stop him or shoot! You know, they threaten to, you know, totally implode the U.S. economy by not fulfilling certain obligations, right? If we didn't give them a boatload of money and bail them out of the debt that they already put on us, right? And he said, since you can't pay it back, you're about to screw us over. So, when we were screwing you the whole time, right? So you're going to give us a bunch of money, and we're going to be quiet about it for a while, right? If that didn't happen, of course, you know, there's a second bailout. They're going to keep asking for more. This is the point. We're to the point where they start sucking the economy dry, right? Because when they have all this debt, it becomes public debt that the people become responsible for, right? And when you get to that point, man, you're really in a bad shape. When the people when it goes from the government being liable to the people themselves being liable, right? So then you got taxes come into play. You start taxing the people. You start siphoning off the people to finance the debt the government is liable to pay back to the banks, right? First example of this in America was the income tax. Income tax technically is illegal, right? The U.S. Constitution has got some clauses in there that says it's basically impossible to directly tax your labor, right? And let's talk about transfer of labor there, right? Because currency is nothing more than an expression of the work you did, right? That's illegal in America. You cannot directly tax labor, right? You can only tax, really, profit from labor. Which means, like, if I work for a company and I make $3,000 a month, you can't tax that, right? You really shouldn't tax that. But if I take that money and I make money from that money, which means wealth from that expression of my labor, then you tax that, right? But that's over now. It's been over for a long time. So now we've seen American taxes going up a bit, right? And the people really in control are getting less taxes paid for, right? Look into Cayman Islands, you'll want to puke. All right, so after that happens, they go into the next phase. They say, okay, you don't want us to really screw you in the butt? All right, here's what you got to do, government. You got to start cutting off things. You got to start trimming the size of your government. All the things that the people who you're liable to told you to do, you can no longer do anymore because we won't give you the money to do it. We won't give you any more this easy debt anymore. You got to cut things. So when that happens is that reduces what the government can do for the people, which means there's more money available to siphon off, right? That's like the final kill blow. We've seen that happen in Greece right now. They're getting ready to basically pull the carpet out from under Greece, right? These austerity measures, right? All those is cutting down government services so the government can pay more of this debt they're liable for back to the banks, which they're never going to be able to really pay off because a quadrillion in debt, I mean, there's no way to pay that off when you try to finance that. Or even the several trillion, I think it's like between 15 and 18 trillion in America right now. They're never going to pay that off. It's impossible. So basically what they've done, at this point, they have enslaved you. Okay? You're a slave now. Right? You work for them. Your expression of your labor, which transfers into some type of currency, goes directly to the banks to pay for this debt that your government has become liable for. Right? So now, you're a slave. Okay? Now, do you understand that concept? That makes you a slave to these international bankers. So, yeah, like I said, it's a lot more simple to explain than you really think it is. It's not a complex idea. And that's what's going on. That's how international banks take over sovereign nations. Exactly how it does. It's a broken record, okay? It's not something that's new, not a new idea. I mean, if you look, I don't have time to really go into the history of it. I mean, really, maybe we can do another video. If I get some good feedback, we'll do a follow-up video on some historical examples of this. But yeah, that's basically how it goes down, right? That's how they get you. All right, so here's a video on that, okay? I really hope you guys enjoy this. Spread it around, actually. Spread it around. Because, you know, I'm kind of plain-spoken. And, you know, I'm a bit easy to understand. Because, you know, I don't bog it down with a lot of jargon and things like that when I speak. Now, when I write, it's a bit different. But when I speak, I keep it easier for everyone to get and digest, right? So, again, like I said, thanks for watching this vid. And, man, y'all spread this around. Leave some comments in the comment box below. Or anywhere where you find this video. Because I spread these videos around a lot. Because I just want to get the message out. You know, if I get 5 people on, like, chime in to check it out, well, I'm happy. You know, I get like 3 comments, 4 comments on Facebook. Dude, I'm happy, okay? Alright, so anyways, man, keep the support up. Please subscribe, please comment, please spread these around, share them with people. And until next time, guys, hey, this is me in Tokyo, checking out.